family farmers and subsistence family farmers. So it's the question of the selo social certification and so on. So I don't know. I think that the question is what your purpose in terms of encouraging biofuels market in your country. In the case of ethanol, it is clear that Brazil decided to engage on ethanol it's much more energy-oriented question. In the case of biofuel, the intention of the government was different. So the intention of the government was to increase rural income. That's the main idea. So of course, we know that this is a strategy that has that has a dead end, because it will not be sustainable. It will not be economically sustainable. So I have nothing against that, but I don't see that strategy as something that will encourage, for example, increasing productivities for sure.
Okay, we have a comment by Bill Holmberg.
Is this going to cost me more money, Bill?
Yeah.
Are you going to ask them for me to contribute more of my salary?
No, just give me your credit card. There was a comment from the audience about America being one of the most wasteful countries in the world, and why should we be concerned about the Amazon? We probably are the most wasteful country in the world, but those of us that care are doing everything we can to trim that waste and to make things right around the world. That's, again, being an idealist. You'd be surprised at the number of people in the United States that are recognizing their responsibilities and doing everything they can. And I think President Obama is a leader in that process. We know we have to do things differently, and we're on the path trying to do that. The comment I'd like to make is that there are probably tens of thousands of engineers and scientists, like the wonderful people we have at this table here, that are working on these issues. And we're going to be finding answers. But unfortunately, the answers sort of boil into the bureaucracy to be put into some sort of a regulation or a law. And what I think is that something we really have to get serious about is that for tens of thousands of bureaucrats and scientists and engineers working this issue, we got several million people out there living the consequences of this. And we've got to find a way to work with them so they understand, so we can work together healing their problems and healing their forest. I think healing the land and the forest and the people go hand in hand.
Thank you. I have still one or two questions with André. Faaij.
Okay, thank you. I have a few related questions on key impacts, key resources needed for agricultural production, and also improving and increasing agricultural production. One is on nutrient availability. The other one is on water. The question, to start with the question on water that's raised. Okay, is that really well taken into account? What happens at the moment you do increase this production, for example, to meet food demand, and add an additional demand for bioenergy? That was an explicit element in the analysis I showed. It is not too difficult to talk a few hours on that to do all the details, but the organization didn't allow for that, poor guys. But what is very important in the current modeling results is that many areas on the globe have in fact been excluded from additional biomass production because of water constraints. So that means that global map has a lot of red zones that are not even considered in a potential analysis for additional production. That's one. The second is that the biomass production potentials, as shown, are all based on rain-fed production, so they do not assume irrigation or additional irrigation for that matter. And the third key factor that came out of the recent assessment work is that the key factor to rationalize agriculture in order to release land, so to say, for bioenergy is also a key way to increase water use efficiency. Mind you that currently agriculture is the key consumer of sweet water, but it is also clear that a lot of water is wasted. We had some discussion this morning already, an illustration that the shift from let's say, the spraying irrigation, so to say, to drop irrigation can make a huge difference. There are many other possibilities. There are also there's also the breeding of making more water efficient crops, and the whole scheme of intensifying, rationalizing agriculture gradually over time should include that water use component. And it is also scientific fact that it can be achieved. It's not easy, but it can be achieved. So those kind of water constraints are part of the current analysis. On the fertilizers, the question was about what about the demand for nitrogen, and what happens to prices for nitrogen at the moment you start to increase demand? Well, first of all, the scenarios on a global scale I talked about do require more nutrients. That's obvious. On an energy balance, from an energy balance perspective, that does not have to be a problem. Like when you look at the energy input in terms of fertilizer for perennial crops, this is a minor, really a minor factor. And generally for conventional agriculture, more intense production means that the energy input per unit of output goes down. That's a fact that many people don't know. If you look at ecological agriculture, extensive agriculture, and look at the energy use per unit of product, it can be quite high because of all the operations you need to produce. So that is one. And nitrogen can be produced with industrial processes on the one hand, but also with biological processes on the other. The latter, I think, is going to be very important in the future, especially for developing nations with intercropping schemes and nitrogen-fixing crops that can partly avoid the production of artificial fertilizers, but it has to be part of the balance. A critical one to look at, however, that was not part of the question, is phosphates. And phosphates is a limited supply. And what I think has to be a part of our overall strategy to look at agriculture for the really long term, so then we're talking end of the century and even beyond, is that we are becoming much more smart about recycling the phosphate nutrients. In many places where there is a surplus of nutrients, phosphates are wasted, and we can, to a large extent, close those loops. That's one. And the other element is that production of perennial crops typically does not have to lead to a large additional demand for phosphorus, because very limited fertilizers are removed with harvesting grasses and trees in the first place. And second, most processes allow for recapturing that phosphate in the product after conversion. So it needs smart thinking, but it can be tackled.
So let me just say one thing on water, not from the standpoint of the sort of the chemical aspects or fertilizer and so forth, but just to point out one fallacy on this obsession at times with life cycle analysis as a tool and with only focus on carbon. And I think probably this jives very well with what Bill Holmberg was talking about earlier, more holistic approach. I've pointed this out at a public hearing at the California Air Resources Board to a significant shock of the CARB folks. I said, if all you want is a low carbon fuel, and you're not going to recognize all these other things that I have been doing, and you're not going to take serious methodological look at the methodology you're using for indirect land use and all these other things we've commented, let me just suggest to you that what you're telling everybody in Brazil that is growing cane is start irrigating it, improve your yield as much as you can, get more cane and more sugar and more ethanol out of that per hectare by using more water, for example, because that won't really affect your carbon footprint, and it will improve the amount of fuel you get out of it. But that is probably not what we want people to do, I said. And they said, well, you wouldn't do that, would you? I said, no, we haven't been doing that. In fact, we've been doing the very opposite. But your policy is so focused only on carbon that it leads people down that line. And we are all recognizing that we have a slew of other problems to deal with, and we're using very weak science to hammer down only one point.
Okay, I'm very glad with the results we got here. I would like to ask the speakers if anyone has a very short comment to end the session. André?
No,
Bill? Okay.
No, I just, no, I think it's, sorry. I think it's, you know, it's interesting to, you know, we are spending so much time trying to understand the dynamics of the Brazilian agriculture, and then we see that we don't even know how to model that, but we have to face new legislation that are assuming that we know everything about the dynamics of the Brazilian agriculture. So it's a kind of I think we are, how to say this, we are trying to be, I don't know, megalomaniac or something like that.
Bill, on that uplifting note.
I just want to reinforce Joel's comment. I'm on the advisory committee with EPA and have been wrestling this land use issue for about a year. Also wrestled the problem on California. And looking at it from the perspective of an ordinary Marine, it just drives you crazy because the bureaucrats are sort of driving the machine and not knowing where the machine is going or caring what the consequences of the machine going in that direction. And we just got to get a lot of ordinary people involved in this process so we can solve the problem. The bureaucrats are not going to solve this problem.
Okay, thank you. André?
Okay. Yeah, maybe one also positive remark about legislators. There seems to be kind of a bashing atmosphere. Maybe that's targeting EPA in California a little bit. I do want to make also a positive remark about the process ongoing in Europe and what the European Commission is trying to do. Of course, we have similar discussions there about ILUC. ILUC factors are already in the current Renewable Energy Directive. But it is also acknowledged by the Commission, and I like that line of thinking, that it is only a start. And we are at the start of a complex but very important process to, over the coming years, really understand better what matters in land use, the drivers behind land use change, also how it can be governed, how it can be kept under control, and what are the right parameters to measure in practice. So the Commission, and then you're really talking about a combination of DG Agri, transport and energy, environment, etc., is very open to science development and will evaluate almost on a continuous basis in the coming year how this monitoring and reporting can be translated into more sophisticated regulations and frameworks. As a scientist, I like that because there is an acknowledgement there that the science base at the moment is not sufficient. I think that's a fact. André Nassar also pointed out very, very clearly where the models are completely insufficient to address the topics we are talking about. And I would say the European process in that sense may serve also as an example how this can be done. So we should kind of keep an open eye to it, an open dialogue also, I think, to those policymakers, and especially be open to show how to do it right. The Brazilian approach, since how pro-alcohol has learned over time, improved performance, and now also includes the total land use issue with the livestock, monitoring that, proving how the land balance basically has been kept neutral, is incredibly important. And we need to deploy this also in other places. And possibly, I think Brazil is ahead in that respect to the United States and Europe. So you may have some missionary work to do there.
No, I will leave it at that, and we'll enjoy a conversation or a coffee break here, that's all.
Okay, well, I have one last note, which is the last plenary session will start in 1 minute from now with Professor Goldenberg. And I thank you very much for being here, for listening to us, and I ask some applause for the speaker.